Is Boise, Idaho too liberal? I was a little hesitant in making this video, but I wanted to share some things that might help you guys in your process of deciding where you're going to live when and if you move to Idaho. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Craig Flott. I'm a real estate agent here, and if you're considering a move or a relocation to Idaho, then be sure to subscribe to this channel. I post a new video each week with helpful information so that I can assist you in your process of determining if Idaho is going to be right for you. So the topic of today's video is Boise, Idaho too liberal? And there are a few things that I want to touch on. I want to touch on how Boise is kind of seen by the greater state of Idaho and people who live outside of Boise. I want to talk about things that you might see in Boise that might make you feel it is maybe a little more liberal leaning. And then I also want to share some stories to kind of help drive some things home so that you can kind of get a feel for what's happening here. And just to put it up front, just so you guys kind of know my experience a bit, I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and then from there I lived in Portland, Oregon. And a lot has happened in both those cities. I talked to a lot of people who are leaving those cities, very similar to the people that I talked to who are leaving California and want to move up here. So I'll start off with one story just to kind of paint a picture of how locals and people in Idaho kind of view Boise. My wife is originally from Idaho and has a lot of family still here. And me and my wife and kids, we all live in Boise, and her family will give us a hard time about it sometimes. And usually it's something along this where somebody says, man, Boise is way too liberal. I could never live there, right? They love Idaho. They see it as a very conservative state. They love their guns. They love their laws. They love their freedoms. But then when they look at Boise, they think, oh, I could never do that. And the same goes for other people moving here. Sometimes when people travel here, they will say, man, Boise just feels a little bit too liberal for me. And so then they start looking at other areas within the Treasure Valley or even other areas within the state. I've had multiple people I've talked to who feel like they don't want to move to Boise because of how things might end up turning out in the next 5 to 10 years. And so they will typically head somewhere else. Usually it's east towards Twin Falls or Idaho Falls, Pocatello, places like that. But that's not an uncommon thing for me to hear. Now, I think if you want to get a feel for maybe the politics of Boise, I would encourage you to go check out the current mayor and look at the things that they're supporting, the things that they're in favor of, what the content is that they're pushing out, because that's going to kind of give you a flavor for where they're wanting to currently take things. Now, I've heard some comments made about Boise specifically that, you know, if you come during a certain time of the year, you're probably going to see a certain kind of flag flying more than you're going to see the American flag. And that can put some people off. And a lot of that comes down to, when I hear it, is that they've seen their own cities that they're coming from, whether it's Portland, Seattle, certain cities in California. They've seen the changes that they've seen in their own cities, and they don't like what they see, and they want to get out of those cities. But then when they come here to Boise, maybe they feel like they're seeing similar things, or they're seeing maybe what their city was like a decade ago, and they saw where their city went in a decade's time, and they think Boise might be on a similar track. And then again, those people are probably going to move further out from Boise. They're going to go check out maybe Meridian, Eagle, Star, Kuna, Nampa, or Caldwell. But ultimately, they'll say, I don't want to be in Boise proper. It's a little bit too liberal for me. There's a family that moved out to Eagle, Idaho, and that was their exact reason for moving to Eagle, Idaho. They loved Idaho. They wanted to move up here from California. And when they came and visited, same thing happened. They saw Boise and they said, we don't want to sign up for what we're seeing happening here. Instead, they chose to move out to Eagle. So that was one of their reasons for wanting to move further away from the city. Now, let me tell you a story. I was talking with somebody who lives here in Boise, and their child is at the public school system there, and is also kind of part of the student body kind of leadership. And over the summertime, that individual was liking some conservative content on social media channels, which should not be a problem at all. But some students saw what was happening and reported her to the school body at the public school there. And ultimately what happened is the school brought this individual in and essentially said, hey, the things that you are liking and commenting on and engaging with on social media could be seen as offensive to some other students. And for any of you listening, your ear should be peaking right at this moment and be thinking, this isn't right. But these are some of the things that are happening here in Boise. And so I just want to make these things known to you that if you are coming here, you may be one of those individuals who feels like, Boise is just a little too liberal for me. And I would just say you have other options in the state of Idaho and specifically within the Treasure Valley, if that is the case. Now, I will make some other comparisons real quick because a lot of people bring this up. Some people will make comments that Boise is just 10 years behind, say, Portland, Oregon. And again, prior to moving here, I was from Portland, Oregon. And so I lived there for a handful of years, saw some things change, and I would say not for the better. When me and my wife lived in Portland, we didn't really let our kids go outside and play in the neighborhood that we lived in because it wasn't super safe. The parks we would go to was always a bit of a challenge because it was a mix of homeless and drugs and kids, which is not the greatest mix. And ultimately, we just kind of saw that city fall into anarchy. They would allow masses of people to gather to protest, but they wouldn't allow churches to gather. And I would say it ultimately became a very inhospitable place to families, Christian families, religious families, and people who wanted to kind of live their lives and who valued safety. Now, what I'm not saying is Boise is identical to Portland, but there are some similarities that people may see. In addition to that, there are some big differences too. This city is very clean. It is very safe. And the people are very kind. We were with a family who just relocated here from the East Coast, and it was funny. We were making a joke with them because we're all hanging out at a park, and our kids were playing in these bushes and trees. And I think I made a comment of just saying, man, that's something you would not allow in Portland, Oregon, because you have no idea what are in the trees. Probably homeless people, drugs, needles, things like that. That's just naturally where they go within parks. But here in Boise, it's like I'm totally fine with my kids running around and climbing through bushes and trees. I'm just not worried about that. And so ultimately, I would say, does Boise lean more liberal than the rest of the state? Is it a bit bluer? Absolutely it is. And some of you, when moving here, will it be a little bluer than you want it to be? Absolutely it will. And you'll consider other areas within the Treasure Valley or the state. But either way, hopefully this sparked some interest and thought with you, and you have a couple options moving forward. Continue to do research on YouTube. Feel free to text, email, or call me. My information is down below. I'm happy to chat with you. If you guys have a question, you can actually click on the link in the description below, and you can write in a question, and I can be sure to respond to you. So that's a really simple way to do it as well. But my last caveat to this would be this. If you live here or are considering moving here, I think Idaho is a great state. There's a lot of reasons that people want to move here for it. There's a lot of reasons that people are leaving Washington, Oregon, and California to come to Idaho. And those of you who I talk to, it's because of what you're seeing in terms of safety and politics and cost of living and all these other things that you are just not a fan of. Just know that Idaho is going to be a lot better than that. So to you, Idaho, and specifically Boise, could be super conservative. To somebody locally here in Idaho who lives in a more rural area, away from a larger city, they're going to see Boise as very, very liberal. So there you have it. Leave your comments in the description below. I may or may not respond to them. But for all of you guys who've been watching my YouTube channel, I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the calls, and I love helping a lot of you get relocated here to Idaho. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.